In respect to the videos that I've made so far, that's the melanin pigment, the blonde tip, and the brown tip. I would also like to state some more things so that we can round up this particular topic so that people will not want to, or people will not be confused. Because I said before, if you want to actually understand all my teachings, you need to watch all my videos. You don't need to skip one and go to another one, skip one and go to another. You need to watch it accordingly how I post it. You get, because if you skip it and watch one and watch another one, you might be confused. That's just it. So for my videos, that's the brown tip and the blonde tip. I was telling you guys about the brown tip, that what brown tip shows is that it is aging. Do you get that? That's when the hair grows out from the scalp and it comes to this place, due to those brown side is showing that the melanin pigment in the hair has broken down due to what the exposure of sunlight, oxygen, and age. You get, and I told you guys that also this happened over the years. So people will now come to ask this question: then why is it that some people's hair don't have brown tip? Or is it a must that when a hair is exposed to sunlight and oxygen that it changes color? Because actually it is not all hair, all raw hair, or all normal hair that we're seeing is having brown tip. So that is what I'm going to explain to you guys in this particular video. So stay tuned. To answer this particular question, we need to understand how genetic works. We all know, or we all have an idea of how genetic can work. Let me say you have a parent now that has like a full hair. There is every possibility that when she gives birth to a child, that child might also imitate the fullness of the hair. You get that? So in terms of melanin pigment, melanin pigment is distributed to in the hair accordingly how the gene is. If a particular gene has more eumelanin pigment, it is going to result to that. If another gene has less eumelanin pigment, it is going to result on its own. If another one has middle, that's like not much, not less in the middle, it is going to result differently. So what will determine if your hair is going to change color as its age is what? The gene. That is what is going to determine if it is going to change color. If your gene has more melanin, that means it is going to behave a certain way. If it does not, it is going to behave a certain way. So that's how I'm going to explain this so that you can understand it very, very well. I told you guys about the melanin pigments that we have in the hair. And I told you guys that there are two major types of melanin pigments, which is the eumelanin and the pheomelanin. And I told you guys also that the eumelanin is what determines if the hair is going to be what? Black or brown. And the pheomelanin is what can determine if the hair is going to be yellow or red. That is it. So when a gene contains more eumelanin in the hair grows out black. You understand? The hair grows out black. And if a hair contains less eumelanin pigment, the hair grows out brown or dark brown. You get that? So when the hair grows out each whether brown or black, the amount of melanin system in a particular hair will now determine if, as it is aging, it is going to result to the brown tip or the blonde tip. So if a hair has more packed eumelanin in the hair, there is every tendency that that hair will not develop a brown tip. But even if it does, it will be trimmed before it appears, because there are people that go back and trim their hair. There are people that are very conscious about their hair growth. When it gets to a certain point, they trim the weaker part of the hair and allow it to grow more. Some people will tell you that if you don't trim the tip of your hair will not grow the way it's supposed to, right? That's just how it is explained now. So when a hair has more melanin in the hair, it grows out black. Then the UV exposure, the oxygen exposure, and the age will now determine if that hair can still hold on to its eumelanin. Because it's one thing for a hair to be black. It's another thing for the environment at which that hair is growing will change the nature of that hair. Because a lot of people will give birth to something, and then that thing might not actually be a way, or it will not result to a way you expect it to, because of this environment. Because some of you would have noticed when you stretch your hair, the amount of heat that you apply on that hair that you start seeing that the hair, like, you start giving you some shade of brown. That is what it is. That is the eumelanin. That's the eumelanin breaking down. But it will not break down because that thing you are doing is not for a long period of time. Do you get that? It's not for a long period. So that sun now, that UV exposure is what we call the sun. When your hair is constantly under the sun, like the environment now, maybe you have like if you're in a place where the sun is scorching and everything, the environment, if you have a certain amount of melanin, it will start breaking down. You get it will start breaking down. But there are people that have like more packed melanin system in their hair, that even in the influence of that sunlight, it will not change as much color. That some people that have less melanin pigment in the hair. Gene, what gene does is just to program the amount of melanin in the hair. You get that? So there's every possibility, because it is not all the hair on the head that might actually behave accordingly. That is why you see that a real brown tip, you'll be noticing some shade of black, some shade of black, some shade of black. Then maybe at the tip, that is where you now see where the whole color has changed. That is why you see the graduation. It is not the way a bleach is applied on a hair that will give the result of a natural brown tip. You get that? So what gene does is the distribution. And those people that does not have brown tip, what is there is that sometimes they are not exposed to the amount of UV exposure or oxygen exposure that other people might have. Or the eumelanin in their hair is stronger and more pigmented. You get? Because what eumelanin does is also, it protects you from the UV exposure. That is the sun exposure. It's what protects the hair to avoid it losing color quickly. So if you have more packed pigment in your cortex, it will not change color. It will not change color. So that does not actually mean that the hair that does not have brown tip does not age. You get that now? It does not mean that the hair does not age. That's why I told you, not all hair that is trimmed out from a person's hair will determine that it has good quality. There's a difference between raw hair and quality hair. Your hair can be raw but not hold quality, and also will not last long. Yes. Which is why when it's time for sourcing, for a good factory, they select which one they think have quality more than the other. That is why you see that they go to specific places. Sometimes they go to deep rural areas just to select good hair, because they will think that it's those people that still use the natural herbs on their hair and don't affect it with much chemicals. With this that I've said, you can imagine how the blonde tip came to be. Excess exposure of UV light and constant cortical erosion. You get that? So gene, that is just what is going to tell you the amount of melanin that is in the hair. You get? So when the hair has less melanin pigment, less melanin in the hair, and it grows out as black, over time it will age and get to blonde tip due to what? The environmental possibilities, the UV exposure, oxygen exposure, and age. So by the time the hair keeps growing and is still under those kind of exposures, it will now result to blonde tip. You get that now? Not all hair gets to that point, but there are hairs that it will age and it will age, and the melanin pigment will break down and break down and break down till the pheomelanin exists itself or reveals itself in the hair. And this happens what? Over time. It does not happen immediately. You get that? Just like the way bleach happened, but this time around, it is done naturally. That is the basic explanation for all these things. And even if you don't understand any other thing, this particular thing I've explained is the most easiest and understandable way to explain it. That's just it. If you don't still understand it, you need to work on yourself. So we've come to the end of the video of today, and I feel like we've summarized everything about blonde tip and brown tip. So we'll move over to the next topic. See you all. Bye.